What is PT? It'll transcribe for you, right?
Yeah.
It won't transcribe, but it'll have a video documentation of this meeting, so.
Okay,
I'm sure everybody sit here and watch the video.
There we go.
Okay.
Nah.
That's the secretary's job.
I think
Yeah.
we're waiting on Ally yet, so, all right. Okay, there she is.
oh, okay. Oh, she got it connected. Okay,
Okay, I think we're all back.
Yeah.
Next up.
I found my way home.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so there was a discussion, I think actually, Michael, do you want to start this? This was for the back four road maintenance cost sharing.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to just open up some dialogue and conversation on, I've gotten some context and history on the why kind of the upper four have been kind of excluded from the road maintenance from, I guess the bottom part of the neighborhood here. I think that all of us kind of have some thoughts to share on that front. John, would you like to maybe start on that, or what would you feel like would be appropriate?
What's that? Well, what we were thinking was, instead of having a big discussion here, which, there's a whole lot of factors. Chris suggested we get a small committee. You only need a few people, somebody to represent the back, somebody that you have good history with all this, and then be able to throw together some ideas and see if anything is possible, without going over it all tonight, but just getting together with a few of the neighbors and presenting all sides of the issue, because I had paperwork from this and that and the other thing. I can tell you right now that it got pretty contentious when this thing all started. It really did. So we like to avoid that and still come up with possibly a workable idea. And as Chris mentioned, any changes would have to be an amendment, to the deed in the bylaws?
Probably a third amendment to the deed restrictions, which would make modifications to the original plot plan to reflect whatever the changes are, as well as the deed restrictions. And you also have to make consistent changes to the homeowners association. Back when the association was first formed, there was a point at which there were lawyers on both sides critiquing what had been put together, and they negotiated out all the differences to try to make sure that the homeowners association was legally put together properly, that it fully matched, the plot plan, the deed restrictions, and the homeowners association all had exactly consistent language in all cases.
And so the plot plan didn't agree with the real plot plan was different. No, it wasn't.
Right, there wasn't a turnaround.
Right, yeah, and that was one of the, because when I first got here, you guys had already built. I don't know how old you were. This was, and then
1974.
Yeah, and then when I got here, it was I built in 82, 83, and I was still working in Africa. And the way it was done, in fact, I even asked, okay, what's this? This road is deeded to 118. Why is that? And they said, well, and at the time, municipalities were taking over some private roads to make extensions. Yeah, thoroughfares. Now that doesn't happen today, but that was one of the reasons that they formed this private drive in order to keep. In fact, your driveway was part of that too, because it became a split with two private roads. So the way it worked from, I guess, 1982 to 2008 was we all just got the bill for whatever it was, plowing and any maintenance that came up. Because we did repave the road in 1990, I believe, when Gilbert got it. Do you remember that?
I thought was it 88 or was it 90?
88, it was around that time frame.
John,
And
was that the whole thing, including the back four?
oh yeah, yeah. And so I think Gilbert, he got the bids and all that, and then he said, okay, this is what it is. And I think it was like $34,000. And basically everybody just chipped in, you know, $2,000. Which is okay, here's $2,000. And it was all 17 households. And then I forget who handled the snowplow early on. But it was like, okay, this is what snow, and we used to have some bad winters in here. And everybody just chipped in, all of us. And then that changed. In fact, it was a surprise to me because I was preparing to deploy to Iraq and Afghanistan in 2006. And then in 2007, I deployed and came back in April of 2008 and found out that I was elected Secretary VP of the association, and now we're going to repave the road. And that was going to be in 2009. And then we found out that, oh, we're repaving the road, but the back four now, you have to pay it separately. So kind of went back and forth. And the only thing that bothered me is up for 20, you know, from the last repaving from like 1990 to 2008, all of us on this lane back here had been putting money in for the road repair. And now all of a sudden that just kind of disappeared. So anyway, it was very contentious and, you know, threats of suits back and forth. And it really came down to, Maury, huh?
And let me jump in for a second.
Yeah.
Around, and again, I wasn't here, but around 2001, Ron Padula, I think in the front,
Right.
he looked closely at the plot plan and the deed restrictions and saw the notation on there that the back driveway is, you know, not really part of the Harvey Lane designation, and that those back four properties are sharing the expenses of that driveway. And that information is included in all of each home's deed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In terms of their responsibilities and rights to use the road and responsibility to pay. And once he saw that, he got 4 or 5 people starting in 2001, 2002 that refused to pay dues. So there was a period of about 5 or 6 years before the homeowners association was formed.
But Harry never enforced it.
Yeah.
So
somebody was putting the money out
to
ahead of time.
pay for was paying for the road for the snowplow. Somebody made up the difference for the snowplow. I didn't know this was going on.
Yeah, so
I don't think anybody knew about the plot plan prior to 2001.
Oh God, everybody. I mean, I knew it when I first moved.
I didn't know. So when Harry said, "Why don't we all just contribute to everything?" I thought that was a great idea.
This was the getting everybody to pay initially, 1990, when it was redone. I mean, we had all been chipping in since I built the house in '82.
Who was collecting that? Who was collecting that?
I forget who was, but we all got a bill, and it wasn't Carol at the time because Harry didn't have much, was not doing anything with it. And the road repair, that was the only thing we really did was repaid because Yako, what he put in was absolute garbage, and the road didn't last very long. And it was basically Dave Gilbert that was at 1-1-8, and he said, "Hey, look, you know, I'll get the bids and put everything together," and he did, and said, "Okay, it's this much," and all 17 of us just went, here's our share.
So I think what happened is everybody when back then, even when they bought their home, at the closing, they would have received a copy of the plot plan, but nobody really noticed the back lane notation. Maybe I don't know whether
I did.
I don't know whether 18 did.
Yeah.
But then what happened is that the group in front basically dug in and said, you know, the homeowners association legally has to mimic and be consistent with the plot plan and the deed restrictions. And they ended up, you know, there were lawyers on both sides, but they ended up prevailing, and the back four residents at that point said, well, okay, well, we'll sign the thing
Yeah.
under protest, I guess.
Yeah, it was.
But,
Yeah, Maurice did not want to go to court.
yeah.
In fact, I remember Ron had this letter written by an attorney, and Maurice showed it, and he says, this is the $10,000 letter. It was this big, complicated, whatever it
Yeah.
was. And Ron was real serious. I'm gonna, I'll fix you guys. And the rumor, I think part of it had to do with Ron's kids gave him a flagpole in front of his house. And this was right after, this is all during about the same time. I remember it was 9/11, after 9/11, 2002. And they put up this really nice flagpole, American flag. Everybody, wow, that's really great. Carol Heller made a big stink out of it. And really was like, and badgered Harry. That was just it. Harry was kind of, Harry was like real laid back. And so badgered Harry, you got to do something, and she made a point about saying this is against the deed restrictions and this and that. What's that? Oh, talk to you guys. And so so anyway, Ron starts digging in and goes, okay, you're talking about deed restrictions, says it right here on the plot plan. And that started the ball rolling. And, people, he got people together and they decided we're not paying any dues. And so it was a shame. So basically it was the front against the back four, and we all just went, okay, fine. But, we paid, in 2009 to get that section paved. And in 2014, because JR, the contractor, did such a bad job, Richards Paving came in and did some repairs. So
Hey, I think Amy wants to say something. Amy has been trying to raise her hand here.
I know that's a fancy way to do it, Michael. I'm sure you know how, in terms of, I couldn't find the button. So you're describing the personalities and the people, and I remember them, which is why I'm laughing out loud. But I also wanted to check in with another dynamic, because we started this by saying we're going to have a separate committee, and then we're going into the history. I just want to recognize that Terry and Allie and Michael and their families are all brand new to all of this, and I think I'm all for having a separate committee, but I also think that if any of those folks want to talk from their experience of having just moved in and learned this, I actually would like to hear from them.
Yeah. Well, thank you, because I think that was kind of like what I was just hoping to say. Like, so when we got that email last year from Chris, basically saying like, hey, the additive cost per household to be able to fix the road would be like $1,700 per household, but hey, the upper four at around like $8,000 or $9,000. I was a little shocked when I read that number. From what I understand, a lot. So for those of you who don't know, I am living in Harry and Carol's house. Whatever contention or anything that might have happened from this house's prior ownership that had contributed to that, I think that the way that, and I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I think that the way that if the back four kind of feel about this is that there's just a lot of new blood that's here in the neighborhood right now. Even if I was, say, the first house on the block where I'm not necessarily utilizing this road as much as, say, the back four people of Harvey Lane, it just seems like a neighborly thing to do, just to make sure, hey, if everything is all Harvey Lane, then we're all kind of in on Harvey Lane. That's the way that I feel about it. If I was house number 1 versus house number 18, I would still be saying, yeah, it feels like it just be kind of something that we all would share in equally, because it's the neighborly thing to do. So that's my opinion on it. And actually, when I was even just breaking down the math as well, too, I mean, even if if this back portion of the road was actually incorporated within that cost, I think it would take an average household cost from like, around 1,700 to like 3,400. So it's not as if we're talking about like a huge chunk of money additively. It just seems like it's an unfair burden that the upper four here are having to share in.
I'm just curious, what the development of the road and a conversation I had with people, the turnaround is right in front of my house. So would that imply that we are the entire Harvey Lane ends in front of my actual home, or should the turnaround be before our back four?
Go ahead, Eric.
Well, yeah, so yeah,
Yeah.
at the end of your driveway there, that actually doesn't qualify as a cul-de-sac. I went down to the courthouse to figure all this out. But some history there. So on the original plot plan, yeah, there is a cul-de-sac there. But
I saw that.
yes, but when they actually started, I mean, the idea was great, but when the reality set in and they started building it, the driveway is actually off. If you look at the property markers that are in cement, and up until Harry Heller took down my dad's trees, half of Antosi's, or sorry, the lower fourth of Antosi's Hill is actually our property.
On the original plot plan.
Yeah, and it
As
actually, the
built.
cement marker,
Yeah.
the cement marker is actually on the stream
Yeah.
between Antosi's and Diane Smith's. So that's what was sold to my dad in 1973
Yeah.
and where we built in 74. But when they started trying to build the driveway, it was going to be too much
Well, Yako
cost.
didn't want to spend the money. He was really cheap.
Well,
That
yeah,
was the
so
other
on
one.
that, yeah, so the original rule was put in by my dad. Yako never
Mhm.
reimbursed my dad. My dad, to keep the peace, just
Yeah.
took it. And in fact, the other thing that Yako took is sitting in Chris Moan's house, and that's the beautiful walnut.
He cut down his walnut tree.
Yeah, but anyway, but so there's a lot of history, but the cul-de-sac itself, the engineers decided not to build it because, one, there was the fear, as John said, that if there's a cul-de-sac there that touches another property, then it's going to be easy for them on the other side, which was originally zoned R1, to put a road right through there. But the other reason, and we've all seen that, is they were worried about all the runoff that's coming from there. So that road would be constantly in a state of disrepair. So what my dad did after conferring with them is he built a turnaround, not a cul-de-sac, but a turnaround right across from our pond and Zimmerman's pond. Yes, so that's that destroyed piece of thing that was never, that hasn't been touched since 1974 when my
Yeah.
dad put it in. That's why the cul-de-sac is not there. And fast forward to all the damage that happened there, we received a check
From Calvary
from Calvary
Chapel.
Chapel for $6,000
Yeah.
after, and I'm sorry, but I had to call them to task in front of the planning commission about all the runoff. And yeah, I showed multiple pictures, and yeah, they finally paid up. But yes, so they were right back then, but that's why. But yeah, if you look down there, you'll see the original cement markers.
Yeah.
So yeah, we actually owned a quarter of that hill, but that's just, there's a lot of history here.
But to come back,
Mhm.
there's supposed to be a turnaround at the end of Harvey Lane. And
Yeah, before my driveway. But it's not, so that's not the point. It's not an argument. I would like to join the committee because these are the questions that I would like answered.
Right.
To see like when it was established, how it was determined, why the setup of the road is the way it's set up, and what we can do to come together and figure this out.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like more, I guess more, like you said with the committee, just more discussion about what is everybody open to and what are our guidelines that we have to work within as far as HOA and plot plans and history and.
Carrie, what are your thoughts?
I have to unmute because my children are in the background. Yeah, I would like to be on the committee as well. I think some of this is slightly antiquated. I agree with Michael. This is all one Harvey Lane. We can all, I think, burden another $1,000 to take care of the road altogether. That's how I feel about it. I would love to hear from people who think that's unreasonable and why.
Well, I mean, and the other thing I have to say too is that if we're no longer concerned about an easement being taken, I mean, I don't know how, but I would love to give the driveway to Harvey Lane. I don't know how to do that, and I don't know if it would be beneficial, but I don't consider it my driveway. I have
HOA
three-
can't own
They
the
don't.
property.
The HOA doesn't actually own Harvey Lane, the first part, because we don't get a tax bill for it. It's all the individual
Oh,
property.
yeah, so, you know,
You
add
go
that
to the
too.
middle of the lane, so it would.
You can add that to my bill.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a problem for your lane to be, for you to agree to, the easement is already there. You already can't do anything with the lane because there's an easement on the 35-foot wide lane.
Yep.
And so you could give that the you know, we'd have to do some surveying down at the end to say, okay, so where does the new Harvey Lane end?
Okay.
Where do the individual properties start? And does there need to be a turnaround there? We would have to, we probably would have to go to the Township Planning Commission and at least show them what we have and what we think we want to do and see whether they're amenable to that or whether they would have their own list of concerns or issues.
Yeah, and the other thing is the road is going to have to be widened if it's going to become part of a lane instead of a private driveway. You have to go from 35 to 50 feet. And back in 74, okay, yeah, the cul-de-sac wasn't necessarily a requirement. It is now, but you know, the way the township reads things, I mean, it's grandfathered. So, you know, if that is wide, then yes, there will be a cul-de-sac. So that you guys are gonna have to give up some land up at the end for that. And the reason for that is so a fire truck, I think it has to, yeah, it has to be turned around. So yeah, and yeah, so yeah.
So what we're thinking is either we're gonna become all Harvey Lane, or there's gonna be something developed at the end of the back four, right? To separate us.
Sorry.
I'm not sure I understand.
Me?
Yeah, what would have to be?
What? I didn't hear you, Eric.
No, I wasn't sure what you were, what has to be developed.
So my question is with the committee, right? And we're gonna discuss this, but I guess I'm just wondering, like, what are the options? Are the options like we be the back four Harvey Lane, or we build
So
something
there's,
at the end of my, like by Michael's house, or what?
so the last time that this came up, and I think, you know, I know you were involved in all that, there was a lot of ideas that were put forward. One of the more notorious ones was to make the billing by lot size. Okay, well, we have 11.5 acres. Okay, so obviously, you know, my dad.
So you don't support that one, huh?
No, and my dad politely raised the fact that, you know, he spent in today's dollars, you know, back then it was, you know, close to what, $65,000 in legal fees that everybody else wrote as free riders. I mean, Harry contributed a little bit and Ed Brooking contributed a little bit, but that was to fight all the development. So where Calvary Chapel sits, that was only supposed to be 10 houses. A corrupt developer and our corrupt supervisor got that overturned. And the plan was to put 144 condos, a super fresh and a Holiday Inn in that little space back there. So my dad paid an extraordinary amount of money to fight all that. And then the 250-foot buffer, we had to get 150 foot of that back. That cost him even more money. Nobody else contributed, but everybody benefited from that. You know, so I guess what I'm saying is anytime we start talking about money, I know it gets touchy. And I think, yeah, we're all friends and we all want to do the right thing. And I think the ideas that were put forward back then, another one that was put forward was, well, the front part of the property, they hardly use the road. They only use the first 100 feet. So they should pay by what they use. Well, that sticks the last part of the property with the most. So that obviously was not a starter either. Ultimately, it settled back onto, and what legally rules is the deed that rules. So the reason that we don't have the property that we bought originally was, which is a quarter of the Antosi's Hill, and on the other side is the deed rules, and the deed restriction which is in place. That's what is legal binding, and that's what they fell back to. So having a committee to talk about it, yeah, absolutely. But I would just throw a note of caution that there's probably not going to be agreement across the board. And the danger of that, of course, especially when we're talking about money, is that can create, derision and divisiveness. And I don't think anybody wants that. So again, it's just a cautionary flag. But yeah, these are things that absolutely should be discussed. So at least everybody can come to some sort of consensus in that good Quaker way that I'm known for.
What do you think would trigger the division and the divisiveness, though? I mean, we're just talking about ideas about how we should move forward. So I'm just curious what other factors we should be concerned with. Anyway.
Money's the big one.
Mhm.
We were involved as well. There are some flashbacks. We've been in the neighborhood about a year and a half, 2 years at that point. We're in the middle of this as well. But yeah, it got very divisive.
Okay.
And the fact is, we all have our deeds and we know what we're supposed to pay, and we have 4 houses that now want everybody else to pay more. So of course, that's where the divisiveness can come from.
Yeah,
And it's reasonable. It's reasonable. You're asking people to pay for something that's not on their deed.
However, we can't.
And we will discuss
easily
what to
fix
do with
the
the
back, yeah.
back door.
Mhm.
Okay, so who's gonna be
Yeah.
on this committee? Chris,
Yeah, and I think it makes sense to have the committee
would you like to form the committee now?
these ideas.
Okay.
Can I ask one question as we go into this? So, because I want to tee up something Ally said about there not being any concern anymore about somebody tying in, like Farmer Craig's land selling and some big development coming in and taking part of Harvey Lane. Is that no? I remember my dad talking about it, but I've been out of the loop. Look, is that not a concern, or is it a concern, or is that a controversial topic too? I just don't know the answer.
Well,
Oh, they
Craig
can
pa-
build over there,
Yeah,
right?
Craig passed away.
Huh?
Craig passed away.
Oh, yeah, I know,
Yes.
that, I mean.
Yeah.
if
Dr.
somebody-
Craig, so it's a son of
eventually
Robbie.
That's gonna get built on.
Yeah.
Not
so it's
necessarily.
open now.
No, the historical society, the Battlefield Society
Yeah.
is trying to get the funding.
The Ameri- yeah.
I'm trying to-
I'll give that update under new business, you know, if you guys want on the Craig property.
Okay.
But I think it's a good question before we leave this. This should be a core thing in the group
Right.
is somebody needs to go back to Chadds Ford Township and say, what are the rules today? Is it possible to get an ironclad legal agreement from Chadds Ford Township that says that they can never take this lane and turn it into
No.
a
No,
third
they
lane
can't.
somehow?
And because I had that answered in the courts, and they can always claim there's a legal test for eminent domain. So it's not off the table. Okay. It's
Okay,
unlikely.
so
but
then
it
I
is
think
not-
that argues our point is the back 4 is the reason we've been holding, or it was determined to be 118s and it was determined to be our responsibility was because we were preventing an easement. But is that still the case? Is that still our concern?
It was a bigger concern. It's not something that can be removed from the table. Again, if they can satisfy the legal test for eminent domain, which is basically a public safety thing, then yes, if they do develop, if they're able to develop the Craig farm, okay, and Calvary has actually asked this, and it was this is several years ago, about getting a cut through, just so to minimize the safety concerns of their folks going on 202 and 1 and all the traffic that's going out of there. So it is a valid safety concern. I mean, it was a non-starter, but yeah, the question was asked. But what matters is what's doable legally, and if they can satisfy the legal test for eminent domain, they can do that. I mean, that's what I'm trying to push eminent domain with the Henderson property. That some of you have seen my emails on, and it does meet the legal test, for eminent domain. But that's if hopefully that answers your question.
For the whole issue, Chris found this, and we have no idea who wrote it. We think it was intended for lawyers asking questions, and basically it says, titled "The Sides of Harvey Lane Issue," and it says, number 1, those who have not paid anything for 5 years for snow plowing and road maintenance because they do not believe they are legally responsible for the driveway deeded to 118. Number 2 is those that have been making payments all along and who would be willing to continue paying, but want everyone required to pay the same thing, and do not believe there are 12 families who agree to changing the deed restrictions. And number 3, those who want to continue dividing the road costs equally, including snow removal and maintenance, deeded to lot 118 among the 17 households, but believe this is legally binding since we've been paying for this way for a number of years, and it was from basically 19. So it says, these are questions I think somebody was posing to attorneys. It says questions. What are our legal obligations under these deed restrictions and plot plan relative to the maintenance and snow removal of this roadway? Number 2, since we paid equally for road maintenance and snow removal since about 1980, this is true, because I have, does that change our legal obligations? Since 6 homeowners, then 5 or 6, they have 6 here, have refused to pay anything since 2001 when they studied the plot plan, how can our association go forward? How should payment be allocated going forward? Number 4, under our deed restrictions, all are required to pay for upkeep of Harvey Lane, but can we legally require everyone to split the cost of upkeep for a private driveway just because we've been doing it that way in the past. Then complication 5 is cul-de-sac shown on our plot plan at the end of Harvey Lane was never built, but a cul-de-sac was put in at the end of the private driveway deeded to lot 118. Is this of significance? We have no idea who wrote this or what the answers were. And like I asked Margo to take a look at it, and she said, yeah, this is somebody wrote this to a lawyer or lawyers, and they posed both sides of the issue or 3 sides of the issue. And at the time when it all, like I said, I came back from deployment and found out that all of a sudden we're paying for the, JR to pave up here. So all this was, and basically Maurice did not want to do the legal battle because that's what it would have taken was, and because I know Ron was like, he was going to sue and he was going to do this and that and the other thing, and was like, okay, peace in the family. And I was on the back. It was me, Harry. I think who was Benet? Was it Benet? Ray Benet? Or was it? It wasn't. Was it Lodadio's then in 2000? Yeah. And then it was Nancy Simpson. And Nancy, she getting ready to move.
Well, yeah. And you said something about you were paying dues all these years for that. And I'm curious as to who got those because the Burks, they tried to collect and nobody collect the back for the driveway thing. And
when I got my receipt from that I paid JR when they
no, the Burks were trying to collect monies for the future driveway costs.
I never heard that.
Yeah, and they said nobody.
I never heard that.
Yeah, they said nobody.
Well, if I never heard it, how are we gonna?
I don't know, but you said you were paying into that.
Well, no, I paid into like when we changed to go pay separately for back here from the last road paving, which was in 1990 up to 2009. Every year I paid.
Let's come back on the history because I think that's what the new folks want to get after is how do we get this group together and really explore all these issues. All issues are fair to have on a list to be explored. Maybe we got to talk to a lawyer or two. Maybe we got to talk to the township. But let's see whether there's some kind of an alternative that everybody could live with, or at least let's say 12 of the 17 homes can live with, because that's what we have to have at the end of the day.
So we'll form some committees or form a committee.
Yeah. I'll be on it. You should be on it. A couple others that volunteer because you've been here
I'll be on it.
Me
One
too.
will be on it. Yep.
I'd like to be on it.
Okay. Ally, Amy, John.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, Michael.
Uh-oh, it sounds like the back 4. There's 3 of the back 4 that are on this committee. I see some strong. Okay, now we got all 4 of the back 4 on there.
You should want to be on it.
Yeah.
Jim, Steve, Marie.
Not me. My feeling is this was all discussed 20 years ago and it was resolved then. And like John said, there was a lot of angst over this, and it all has to come down. It comes down to the plot plan. And ever since the organization was formed, everybody's been paying equally, but for Harvey Lane per se. And that's where I'm at.
Okay.
I also think that we shouldn't be, Diane, I also think we shouldn't be putting money into legal fees to, check all this out unless we vote on it. And people agree that it needs, to be looked into again. I mean, like Jim said, this was all resolved already. So if we're going to start putting money into legal fees, then we need to vote on that.
Yeah, it was a long.
As well as run dry, so he's not paying for everybody else anymore.
I thought we were just starting with a committee.
Yeah.
I didn't know we were going legal yet.
No.
I just want to have a discussion.
Let the committee discuss, and then we'll go from there. But we're not doing any legal fees or anything right now. Let's just let the committee get together and discuss. Do you or Steve want to be on the committee?
I'm gonna go with I was on it last time around, and it got. I don't want to go through the angst again, to be quite honest with you. Let me think about it, but
okay. Okay, we'll keep you apprised of that.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna be on the committee, but I'm willing to offer myself as somebody that calculates the financial impact of whatever the outcome is, or whatever we're kind of gelling around, to calculate the impact and communicate it to every homeowner so that there's clarity on that particular piece, as a resource.
I'm not gonna be on the committee. I mean,
Yeah.
my husband will, but we can keep that.
I gotta be on
I-
this?
I won't be on
Yeah.
it.
Christ, I gotta do this.
I'm
Christ's
just
sake.
volunteer. I won't be on it, so,
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I'm gonna pass too.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, so, we'll get a committee formed, and then moving on, do update on the condition of Harvey Lane.
Yeah, condition of Harvey Lane, we, of course, everybody got all the communication last fall. We talked about it, referred to it earlier. I think the general feeling is that Harvey Lane is not totally falling apart, although there are parts of Harvey Lane that are deteriorating. When we first put this on the agenda, we had not gone back to the contractors to ask them for revised bids. But after we put it on the agenda in the last week and a half, I contacted the two vendors that we favored in the last letter that we sent out. And they actually both came in with quotes for Harvey Lane that are within our current resources of approximately 75,000 when we have 82, which would leave us with money that could be used for snow plowing over the winter, that would leave us in okay shape. So the point I want to make, we don't have to go forward with repairing the lane or replacing the lane. We could wait on it. But we do have a window right now where oil prices are low enough, the cost of doing the work is low enough, and we have the resources that we could, if we wanted to, we could repave Harvey Lane, you know, the 50-foot wide easement Harvey Lane at this point in time. I want to make sure everybody knows that we have that window, because if we choose to wait, we could wait 2 or 3 years and maybe do some repairs. If we choose to wait, you know, we have risks on both sides of that coin. We could have oil prices go down, or we could have a recession like everybody's talking about. You know, we could have a lot more oil pumped, or we could go the other way and have a lot higher oil prices and be back in a position where we actually don't have the funds to do the repaving. But I wanted to make sure everybody understood it. Now,
Or we could,
go ahead.
Chris, we could have a possibility of a real winter. And with the cobwebbing that is in the roads, like you said, it's in good shape now overall, but that'll really change if we have a bad winter because of the quality of the road. That's another discussion, the quality of the road, but it's resulted in this premature cobwebbing and cracks, as we know. And the repairs are kind of holding up. But again, we've had very mild winters, and that contributed a lot to keeping it as, quote, good as it is.
Yeah, the cold temperatures, the snow, and then the plow really.
You're right. The salt, yeah.
Anyway,
if you don't mind me chiming in for a minute.
Yeah.
I did most of the research last time we did this repaving here. My recommendation was not the people we went with, number one. I was overruled on that. There are a number of different ways I learned through this to repave this. We chose to take a cheap way, which just run it over and come back with the top. I actually had guarantees in the contract, but the choice was to override that and hire someone else. It's a long story, but the recommendations were not only just to repave, it is to take these places that are cracked or where you see anything coming through, cut them out and rebed it so that we don't have to deal with this again. We also had an option of putting basically almost kind of like a rebar across this. We went the other way because the prices, quite frankly, like you just mentioned, Chris, the prices spiked on oil. Yeah. Unfortunately, the following year they came back down, So I think we have to make we should put a group together and find out what the real options are out here. As far as, what are people coming in to do? What are their recommendations, and how far do we want to go, and what do we want to pay? Because I really don't want to pitch in for a job that was done like it was last time. There are places on this road, as you
I think we have a lot of
that have
that information.
less than half of an inch there.
Yeah.
The quotes we got, they got into a lot of technical details over what they want to do exactly along the lines of what you were talking about and the costs associated with that. And
Unfortunately, Jim, one of
has
those
that
spots
data.
is in front of your house.
Yeah, and the quotes that we have, the way it's designed right now to be done is that the companies would mill 2 inches off the total lane. They would take 4 inches off on the places where the deterioration is happening. And then on those places where they've taken 4 inches off, they would put 2 inches of intermediate or aggregate material. And then they would put 2 inches of top material on the whole lane. And all of the providers, we did have people that said, take the whole thing out and start over. Very expensive. But what the quotes that we were favoring last fall with that, and if you go back and review all that memo and information, the ones that we were favoring were sort of in the middle of the road. That we had somebody quote like JR did, where I'll just scratch the surface and stick another 2 inches on and everybody will be happy. But that's what JR did back in 2008.
It was a half inch.
And so we think that the quotes that we have, based on the 5 different providers that told us what they thought we should be doing, is a reasonable way to fix it with a 20-year timeline, as long as we do some seal coating along the way during the time frame that after the road is done. So that's kind of what we were doing. But if you want to, maybe we could get together separately and go through what was done last fall and look at the quality of it, and whether it looks like it would really solve the problem. But we do have to kind of, we were asking for the board to be given the ability to go ahead as long as we didn't have to assess anybody any money. But after the time we put that on the list, we also got quotes in that actually meet that requirement of being done. So I don't know whether we should just skip that question or whether we should vote on it, but agree that we won't do anything right away, or whether we should go ahead and repave the lane based on the approach that we think.
See, I favor,
wants to be involved in this one.
based on what we've done in the past, I favor another round with the epoxy, because that does work. I mean, what we've done with that epoxy has held up. And now that we found East Coast distributors, we don't have the high shipping costs. I mean, what was it? The shipping was more than the epoxy out of California. It's $230 versus, something like that. So, I mean, I look at the road when, and I think the epoxy, in fact, they got videos of it now, the company that does it, Flowmix out in California. And I think we can get probably 3 more good years, depends on the winter. If we have a disastrous winter, then maybe it won't. But that epoxy, where we did the repairs, even filling the cracks and everything, it has held up. I mean, it really has. And
Yes,
I just see like tearing out, because like as you come in onto Harvey Lane and go around that first curve, that road's fine. That road's in decent shape. And I just can't see tearing a good section of road up, to repair it, when maybe we could do an epoxy repair. If it doesn't work, then we'll have to come back and look at, but we do it. So the labor's just, that's taken care of. It's just a matter of, like I said, I'll drive up to Jersey and pick up how many gallons we need, because that's what we're talking about in the back here. I think that those ruts in that road, that epoxy from the videos I've seen, will take care of it. That's strong. It's really an interesting, I'm glad Maurice found it, because it does work, and it holds up.
I can also ask my brother about this. He owns a driveway sealing business, and he has for 15 years. So I'd be happy to him about it as well. Might be helpful.
Sounds good.
There's another aspect I'd like to throw in here, and that is, I feel like since the last road repaving, we take on a lot more water than we used to, and I think they crowned it wrong. I think they crowned it too high, and the water's all coming onto our side. We're losing those big, beautiful trees that are kind of a signature of our neighborhood here as you come in onto the lane, and we're losing them. And it's just too much water that's going there. So I think something needs to be done there to correct that as well. That needs to be looked at.
The providers have said that they have agreed that the crowning is too high in the center of the lane when we come out and quote.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have a problem with it before the last repaving.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to make sure if we decide that we're going to continue to repair it and wait a few years, I want to make sure that's a conscious decision of the neighborhood, since we know that we do have the resources to do the work now in a way that is more like what was supposed to be done the last time that ended up not being done because of oil prices. As long as it's a conscious decision, I think it's fine.
Well, and I don't know that it was all because of oil prices. I think that, you know, maybe because of oil prices, we chose the cheapest, or whoever made that decision chose the cheapest one. But the problem is, we need to choose somebody that we can trust. And this guy, we had put it out there up front. He's offering us a free driveway if we go with him. He's offering the people across the street a free driveway if we go with them. And then somehow we ended up going with them. We didn't trust them at all. We need to make sure we've got a company that's reputable and that can be trusted.
Yeah, and if I could give you a little of the history that I think I've learned over the years with this particular case, because the provider that was going to do the work and then got deselected, we actually had him in to look again, and he said, "I remember you guys. I quoted your job in 2008." What happened was that he gave us a quote. There was a delay of 3 or 4 months while people were talking and trying to get all the ducks in a row, and oil prices were rising during that time. And when they went to sign the quote and say, "Let's go, we're ready to go," he said, "Oil prices have run away from us. It's going to be another $6,000. And I think the committee that was doing the road at the time said, "We can't stand to go ask people for more money to use it."
There was more to it than that, Chris. I actually was one negotiating that. He is right, but I solidified a price the week before we took our vote, and he changed his price. But when we went back, we never re-voted on anything. A decision was made by the board to go with JR.
Yeah.
There was never a reconsideration of all the options that were out there.
Yeah.
So I was pretty front and center on that. I was completely front and center. My butt was on the line, and I didn't like the way it turned out either way across the board.
Yeah.
I didn't like him calling me back. That kind of ended my relationship with him very quickly when I talked to him the following week and the prices went up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
But I mean, the price is going up at that point with the oil going up. You can't expect somebody to do it for less than cost. I mean,
I just think we need to be
it has to be
very
reasonable.
aware of where we are with oil prices, and if they do spike very rapidly, there'll be some rapid changes. Either, like you said, either up or down based on.
Well, we noticed that the bid is down as quick when
paving
the
is
prices
very-
drop from 100 to 70.
Yeah. Yeah, the paving is very sensitive to oil prices, prevailing oil prices.
Yeah. In that particular instance, though, he gave us a price 1 week prior. We voted on it, and then he raised the price, not 3 months.
Okay. Okay. I had the facts wrong on that then.
Well, it wasn't you. I'm sure that's how he remembers it, but it wasn't.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I guess the question on the table then is, should we vote on that proposal, or should we not vote on that proposal because we still need to we want to do further work. We want to let the subcommittee work on the neighborhood issues. What do people feel like they want to do with that question about whether we should have the board with the authority to pave within the means.
Have we gotten quotes on just Harvey Lane and then Harvey Lane with the extension and seen what the actual difference is?
Yeah, we have all those.
About
quotes.
$8,000 more for the upper houses versus around 17 for the lower.
And we have more than one quote?
Yeah, well, we had 5 quotes originally. We went back to the 2 that in our October letter where we described how each person was going to do the work. There were 2 that the committee that worked on that recommended as being our favored providers. And I went back to those 2 providers in the last week and asked them to freshen their quotes. And that's the answers that we got, is that we're, because we've collected another year of dues and because oil prices came down some, we reached a point where we could go ahead and do it. But then we only have, we have $5,000 in the kitty to pay next winter's plowing cost and other expenses that we saw on the, for the homeowner association. So we have the ability to move forward, but we also could probably wait. We just need to understand there's a risk with waiting. The price could get better, but the price could also get worse. And we could be back, needing to do an assessment when the time comes to do the paving. I guess the question I could also ask is, how do you feel about driving on the lane every day? Does it bother you? If we think the lane's going to hold together for another 3 years, it was really intended to be a 20-year job to start with. If we patch the lane for another 3 years, is that going to bother anybody? If not, we can roll the dice and take our chance and just say, we're not going to do anything right now. We're just going to buy some repair material and patch it.
It's not really fair for us up at the very front to be weighing in on that one. You guys are the ones who drive it. We go about a block,
Yeah,
100 yards. So you guys, that one's on you.
There's down here, I guess there's one rut, where it's collapsed and all, but that, that's not enough to, because otherwise, because it's stuff that Richards did down here, that's held up really good.
Yeah.
When the stuff he did in 2014. Yeah, those repairs have held up.
There's one area where it's caving a little bit. I don't know whether that's erosion or not. But
Where's that?
down toward the valley.
Oh, yeah. It might just be the erosion, but most of the repairs have really, they held up, and the epoxy's held up.
Yeah. So
I'm inclined to just see what happens for next year or year, if we can get 3 or 4, whatever out of the road.
I don't think that, yeah.
yeah, so we're just willing to vote on that.
Yeah.
And
We'll just table that.
and then we can continue to look and see what happens. I mean, if we do have a real recession, like they keep telling us is coming, but it doesn't, we could see prices go down, but we don't really know for sure. We can come back and revisit it. We would just need, any time that the homeowners association wants to spend $10,000 or more, it requires a vote of the members. And then we would have to call a special meeting of the homeowners association in order to approve that, if the conditions moved to favor going ahead with it. Otherwise, we can just do repairs for the next few years and see how it goes, or we can revisit it annually at the meeting. That sound like a.
Yeah.
We could do the repairs, and if things get worse because the winters get worse, then it may make more sense to go for it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And meanwhile, we're just risking the inflationary values that could occur. That's a risk you take.
Maybe
Okay.
we'll call an emergency meeting. So.
Okay, so we won't hold a vote on that. We'll just play it by ear but everybody knows we'll do some repairs, but the repairs that we do will not cost anything that requires the homeowners association to convene a special meeting. It'll only be a few $100s or something like that, or $500, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any other business? Anybody?
Hey, does anybody want an update on the Craig farm, or not really? Just tell me. My feelings aren't hurt one way or another.
What are they doing?
Well, the good news is right now, nothing. Robbie Craig is happy farming the land. Yes, there are developers that are very interested in it, and they're willing to pay more than the American Battlefield Trust and other things that, I've been working with, more money than they have raised. But for the short term, he's not making any decisions as to which way he's going to go with it. Our hope is that he will conserve the land, which his father's wishes were, and we'll see what happens from there.
And are they talking about possibly conserving some of the land? And would it
Yeah, so
be-
the farm itself, so back in the 50s, Route 202 was built that basically bifurcated the Craig farm. So half of the Craig farm is in Delaware County or in Chadsford, the other half is over in Thornton. And the 59 acres that is on this side, the American Battlefield Trust had raised, I think it was in the neighborhood of $6 million in matching funds, and with grants, they probably would have come up to about 12 million to buy that 59 acres. I think there was another developer that was offering about $1 million or $2 million more for that, so they could heavily develop the land. So, yeah, right now there's not any plans for it. We'll see what happens in the coming years.
Okay.
And when did he pass?
Dr. Craig passed last October.
Yeah.
93.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that none of his kids had any interest in farming.
Really?
but he
Yeah,
must-
Yeah, he has
He
the
has
one.
one
He has
child.
the one boy, Robbie. He's out in California. He's a postdoctoral chemical engineer, but yeah, he still likes the farming, and yeah, we'll see what happens. You might see in the fall, my deputies are going to be on the farm there. We're doing and John knows what this is, called a leadership staff ride. So I've got folks from Fort Leslie McNair that are coming up, and we're going to be on the farm there as part of the history of that. If those of you who aren't familiar with the history there, the only reason we're not speaking in Cockney accents is the fact that they did the 4th and 7th Virginia under General Nathaniel Greene, did what's called a reverse slope defense there, which prevented Washington's retreating army from getting encircled by General Howe and the 2nd British Grenadiers. Had it not been for that maneuver, the revolution would have ended right there on the Craig farm. According to that's right. So according to the Army Center for Military History, that is, it's a national treasure that's on our borders there.
And I don't know whether you all know that the house that's across, the older home across from the entrance to Harvey Lane was General Howe's headquarters for a few days during the Revolutionary War, during the Battle of Brandywine. They were running a hospital in the basement, and he was running the British Army from that site.
Yeah, and in fact, the last part of the battle they've now confirmed, thanks to Dr. Craig, and where he pointed out to the Army historians that were up, where he found all the musket balls, that confirmed the British maps that they have that showed that was actually the last part of the battle. So for the folks on the hillside, which would be, John, and so for the back four, you actually had troop movements across your property, and likely artillery was placed there to cover the retreat. So it's kind of cool what's there.
Anything else? Anybody have anything else?
I'll only bring up one thing real quick. I know some of you who've lived here a little bit longer, but over the last few years, I have seen a large increase in the amount of water running through these ponds and through our yard. Pretty much everything that comes off of the up front will go through our backyard, and it had to do with the gentleman who put in about a 4. It was a tremendous change with the gentleman who put in about a 4 to 5 inch. I don't know what you want to call it, like a
berm. Put the berm in.
Basically a small berm in there.
Asphalt.
That asphalt berm. I'd like to go to the township and at least let him know that the rest of this neighborhood is seeing these problems with the increased water coming through on the ponds as well. We're seeing a tremendous difference in the amount of water that comes through here.
I agree. He used to get kind of a lake out in that field. That's why he put that berm in. And
Right.
every time it rains, I'd go real close to his driveway to knock some water into his.
Yeah. Well, I've actually got videos of me walking up there where literally on the street in the middle of a heavy rain, the water is coming this deep down the road now where it didn't used to. And I think it's affecting everybody downstream in the ponds and everything else.
Does anybody have any input on that? Like, you want to speak to how it might be impacting you guys?
Yeah,
Just curious.
the pond that I share has been overflowing more frequently, and we've had some horrendous overtoppings. And John knows, John also has a little piece of it, but the back end of that was eroding away because of the overtopping activities. And so I've been trying to build an earthen berm on the south end of that so that when we do get the big rains, the water will divert on both sides and won't go straight over the top.
You cleared out that, so there's that natural gully for the overflow.
Yeah, but I have some short video clips that is scary. Well, how much
Well,
water.
I have video clips as well.
Scary.
It sounds like it's a HOA issue because it's impacting multiple
Right.
houses in the HOA. So
It's affecting me.
Okay,
The runoff in the last, when did they build that berm?
they did that about three years ago, maybe.
And that makes sense because ever since I've had horrible runoff into the pool, turning the whole thing like mud brown, take me a couple weeks. To
Okay. As long as I know you guys are affected as well, I'll try to poke around here and see what we can do with the township, whoever it was. I'm sure it's not sanctioned.
Yeah, and going on behalf of the HOA will give it a little bit more weight than
Right.
just individually. So, and it sounds like this is a HOA issue. So,
Yeah. Good.
Okay. All right, well, thank you, Steve.
Okay.
Anything else?
Sorry about the length.
Who's heading the committee of the back four?
Chris and I'll put something together and then you all can decide who wants to head your committee.
Or John.
John? you
Yeah.
want-
John, I nominate John.
John has an unbiased opinion on all of it, so why not, right?
I second the nomination of
He's
John.
got information and he's stuck in the middle.
Yeah, right.
I got you too, because I got asked you for stuff. Well,
Well, probably between the two of you, you could probably come to some sort of
Good.
resolution there.
all right.
Okay,
And
Hey,
so-
Mike, is this all recorded?
yes.
Because I'm gonna have to look at this video to get all these minutes down.
I
In
told
fact, what I'm
you.
gonna do
I
is
got you, John.
video, watch it.
Yeah, so for next year's, I told you, so for next year's meeting, we'll have to play this whole thing for 2
Yeah.
hours to get the minutes
Yeah, we're
approved.
gonna sit here next year, y'all gonna sit there and watch this video.
Hey, you know what? You just do me a favor, watch it in like 15-minute increments. Every time you drink a glass of wine, that's when you start a new section.
There you go.
And-
Find this time.
Okay, well, if there isn't anything else, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion
John.
to-
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, second.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.